The Dog and Deuce Show is produced by Dymar Productions in association with Studio B Productions.
Welcome to Utah's longest running sports podcast. This is Dog and Deuce. College football week 0 kicks off this weekend, and then the local teams will follow next week. We'll break it all down and get you ready for the games. Plus, the Pac-12, ACC, and Big Ten form a quote-unquote alliance, but the Big 12 is left out in the cold yet again. We've got all that and a whole lot more coming your way on Dog and Deuce number 379.
From Studio B in Salt Lake City, this is Dog and Deuce. Join the conversation at doganddeuce.com or send an email to doganddeuce@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening to episode 379 of the Dog and Deuce Show. If you want to know more, and I sure hope you do, follow along with the show notes at doganddeuce.com.
Watch this show all weekend long on your television sets on K-Patter TV, or if you're in Southern Utah, watch on Backcountry TV. And as always, you can listen wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We would love to hear from you. Send us an email to doganddeuce@gmail.com. I'm Dog.
And I'm Deuce.
And this is episode 379. Oh, baby, college football's here. It's week 0. I forgot about week 0 until like a few minutes before we started the prep for the show. I totally spaced it, and I was like, man, I got to wait another week. And now, it's not the Utes, it's not the Cougars, it's not the Aggies, but it's still college football, and it's going to be this weekend. Like, I'm so pumped. This is my favorite time of year. It's bringing in the fall, and I'm just stoked, man. So it seems like this year you're a little bit more excited than usual.
Yeah, it's ebbing and flowing. I mean, we got a pretty good slate. We got a local team in Southern Utah playing week 0. We got the Scott Frost saga, Nebraska versus Illinois. And then, we get to watch UCLA do battle versus the Rainbow Warriors in the Rose Bowl. So, I mean, those are 3 pretty good games to watch if it's not your favorite team. And I am excited for college football season, but I got to ask you a few questions, man.
All right.
Before we get underway. First question, how about baseball? Did you watch the Padres-Dodgers game last night?
No.
Extra innings, 16, 1-1, bottom of the 12th. Beautiful baseball. I knew you didn't. It was the only thing that kept me happy. Secondly, and I may have asked you this, but I could not recall. When you're driving, and you're driving around the city, do you pay attention who's driving next to you? Like, do you look at the people? When you're at a light,
yeah,
you pull up and look at every person around you?
Yeah, I tend to do that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank God, because I've been conducting a survey. Have I asked you this question before?
No.
When I've seen you, I've been a little loose, so I don't remember.
No, you have not asked me this question, but I do that, and I it's a little awkward sometimes because I don't realize I do it until they look back at me, and then I'm like, oh, wow, this is weird, isn't it?
See, I don't find it weird at all.
Really?
I love it.
You love it?
I'm annoyed when people don't look back at me.
Why?
I'm interested to see.
Well, you are a curious person. You're the kind of person who will go talk to anybody, ask them questions, like learn about them. Like, you're a very curious person. For me, I'm like a super big introvert, so it's weird for me when I get busted doing it.
Well, so this brings up this thing, and this story is it's not gonna be very good. You'll have to read between the lines because I'm not trying to toot my own horn.
Okay.
So needless to say, last Sunday, I'm driving home, sitting at a light. I'm about 60%. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, 60%. It's early Sunday morning.
Right.
60%. I just ripped out. My grandpa's house had flooded. So I had to go rip out some carpet. So, 60% sitting at a light, kind of just spacing out. Out of the corner of my eye, I see this kid, probably like a 13-year-old. And it appear as though they're speaking to me directly. And so I'm like, kindred spirit.
Is this in the car next to you?
They're actually 2 lanes over.
Okay.
So I'm in the far right lane. In fact, I'll tell you where it is. 13th East, the diagonal Murray Holiday Boulevard. I'm at that light going south.
Gotcha.
To my house. So, and I'm kind of like literally zoned out, but like they keep talking to me or whatever. And so the story goes, whatever, we have our interaction. And basically what it came down to is, I wonder if my children will ever stand as hard for me as this kid was for their parents. I'm going to leave it at that.
Wait, what? Wait, I don't understand. What? Yeah,
you're going to have to read between the lines.
I have no idea. Did you talk?
What occurred? It's like awkward.
Well, did you actually talk to him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They asked me questions. It was like an interrogation.
So they called. So you guys both rolled down your window and you're just chatting with this kid 2 lanes over.
So they're rolling. They had their window down and they're like looking at me, like talking towards me, I think, or maybe to the person next to him when it initially starts. I don't really know, but they're definitively like looking at me.
What? That's weird, dude. That's weird. But I don't understand at all what you're trying to say. Like, I can't read between any lines here. Were you driving like a maniac? Was he getting
No, it's not like that at all. No, it was very kind of like the kid was standing on their parent hard. She was going all out for her parent.
For her parents.
Right.
I don't get it. I don't understand.
So don't worry about it. I'm just saying.
You have to tell me off mic.
Can you imagine your kid? The whole point of it is, can you imagine your kid standing? See that? I'm using vernacular for the
Look at you, dude. You're like a young guy.
Yeah, young guy now. Standing for your parent that hard. That was the whole point of it. Like, I came home, told Kate about it, the missus, and she was like, that's weird. And I was like, yeah, but I was just so proud of this kid for standing for their parents, being a fan, being an advocate for their parent, that it made me wonder, like, would my kid do that? And I was like, probably not.
Now I'm curious. Were you talking trash about their parent? What was
not
going on?
At all? Oh, no. Nothing like that.
But something must have happened for them to like defend their parent.
They weren't defending their parent.
Okay. They're just.
It was not. There was no anger, no hostility. They weren't defending their parent.
They're
they
just
were
like
advocating for their parent.
Okay. I don't know. I don't understand.
Mom.
Okay.
Like, let me help you. They're advocating for their mom.
Okay. So they're just telling you how awesome mom is, essentially.
Exactly.
Gotcha. All right. That makes a little bit more sense. Well,
there you go.
I don't know. I piss my kids off way too often, I think.
Yeah, no, dude. And I just came to the realization, like, that kid is awesome.
Yeah, dude.
That's real. What I was like. I came home and I was like, I don't think my kids would ever do what just happened to me. And it's kind of hurts my heart, you know?
Made you sad.
Yeah.
Made you sad. Yeah. No, I get it, man. I don't think my kids
But at least we're on the same page. 80147 Sport. I know we're going to get to college football, but you are the only person, Alan. And I've conducted not an extremely accurate scientific survey, but a fairly good one. I've asked a lot of people. Everyone makes fun of me because if you drive with me, you know that I look at everyone. Scares the bejesus out of my wife. Like, I don't even look at the road. Knock on wood. I'm joking for insurance purposes, but I'm just saying, I'm glad that I found you.
Oh, dude, I'm the same way.
Also looks at everyone at the light. Like, it's weird to me that people don't. How do you stay looking at nothing?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I don't get it.
What's
I know.
going on around me? I know the light's red. It's interesting. Like, it's almost fascinating when I look at someone and they're so dialed in.
It's weird,
like, well,
dude.
We're at stop. We're not driving.
So I'm
dialed in.
I'm the only one who says that they look at other people at the
Everyone else is like, no, you're weird. I don't look at it. I'm like, what?
80147 Sport. Do you look at other people when you stop at the stoplight? Are you looking around? Because I'm actually now I'm intrigued to see who does and who doesn't. Or you can email us, doganddeuce@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter. You are at doganddeuce. I am at A Martindale Film. I want to know. I think this is an interesting topic that you've raised. As usual, you keep doing that. I actually have a list of bands because we had.
Go.
So we'll do that at the end of the show. But you brought up the point of like 10 best or most influential bands of all time. I have a list that I made up, and of course you didn't. You didn't. You slacked. See, I'm
making up easier, awesome things that I can just do on the fly that I don't have to put any work after the show in. I realized the band thing was more than I wanted to take on, so I went with this one.
You spurned the conversation, but you're not going to aid in its progress at all. No,
absolutely not.
Okay, let's talk about some BYU football. We did Utah last week. We hit Utah pretty hard because we are Utah fans. I'd say this is this show we try and hit all the local college teams, but we tend to hit Utah a little bit harder just because that's kind of where our major focuses as fans, but we definitely follow BYU and Utah State very closely as well during the season. So what we've done, we'll do it for all three teams this week, but we've actually made our win prediction for all three teams. This year, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to start out this segment by saying it. I think BYU is going to have a tough season. And it's not because they're not talented. It's not because they're not well coached. It's not because they don't have the right skill set. The main reason, not the only reason, the main reason is this schedule is brutal. And I know a lot of BYU fans are very optimistic, as they tend to be before the season starts. And a lot of the time, the expectations are sky high, and some might say unrealistic at times. Go back to the Quest for Perfection days. Band of Brothers. I'm kind of getting the sense that this is a very similar season to that. I'm hearing a lot of BYU fans very optimistic, and I would argue overly optimistic about what the team's going to do. This is not a Utah fan trying to talk down to BYU fans. I'm not a Utah fan who's looking at this and is biased. I genuinely am looking at the schedule, and I don't know where they're going to get all these wins that a lot of other people seem to think they're going to get, because it is a brutal schedule. So do you want to, should we just give our win prediction right off the bat?
Yeah, let's give our win prediction and kind of tell them why we think that, this is how we see it playing out. What do you got, my friend?
No, we're going to start with you.
Oh, me. So here's what I got. I got the BYU Cougars coming off an 11-1 season, going 6-6. I almost had them at 7-5, but then I realized I had a win at a bye. And here's my losses. Maybe it's easier to tell you losses. I got loss at Utah, Arizona State, Boise State, Baylor, Virginia, and at USC. My wins then are Arizona, USF, Utah State, Washington State, Georgia Southern, and Idaho State.
Dude, we are exactly the same.
Wow.
I'm 6-6.
I don't know that that's ever happened, has it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. There were a couple that I was a little iffy on, but we are exactly the same. But I want to go back to something you said. You had them with a win during a bye?
Yeah. That's why I got to 7-5 there for a minute as I was doing the math.
Wait a minute. So that means you had to have left off another school.
Yeah, well, I didn't do the counting very well, but I remedied it before we came on air. Okay, I'm not a counter, dude. I'm not an accountant. I just
that is funny.
Suck at math, man.
You gave him a win during a bye, and then you left some other school off, some other opponent off.
No, I had total. I just put a W.
Okay,
you see what I mean.
All right. Okay, I gotcha. That's funny. I mean, look, they have so many. Not so many, but they have got the most important position is still a question mark. And at quarterback, I know they've got guys who have experience. Jaron Hall, who I think is going to be the starter, I think is very talented. There's a lot he can get done on the field. I believe that. It's just a brutal schedule. This is probably as hard of a schedule as they've ever played. And they've been scheduling very difficult over the past 10 years or whatever it is. Usually it'll look brutal on paper, and this could very well happen this season as well. It'll look brutal on paper, but a couple teams will not be, a couple of their opponents will not be performing as we thought they would in the preseason. And that could be. But right now I'm looking at this, and I don't know where. I've heard a lot of people predict 9. I've heard a few people predict 10 wins. I don't know where you're getting these other wins. I just don't. And again, it's that's why when Phil Steele was on, I asked him, should they just kind of schedule some more cupcakes in order to, because last year they were forced to play some really poor opponents. And look what it did for him. It got him a second-round draft pick.
First round, second pick.
Excuse me, not second round.
Easy. I'm just trying to keep
pick of the draft. Right. Second pick of the draft. They went 11-1. They had national people talking about him all the time. Now they go back to this brutal schedule, and I mean, if they are 6-6 like we predict, they're going to be a non-factor nationally, which is kind of what they need. When you're not in a conference and you don't have anything to compete for, you really need that national exposure. You need ESPN bumping your brand up and not relegating you to a late game on Saturday night or whatever it is. So they really, really need to bump the pedigree and have the national guys talking about him. I just don't see it happening with this schedule.
I mean, look, I don't know how anyone could argue with your line of thought, right? I mean, it's pretty consistent, pretty logical. Look, Jaron Hall is the starter. He was named the starter yesterday. I thought he was going to be the starter. I don't know why he wouldn't be, right? I mean, he's played. He gave up baseball to focus on it. And my real concern with Jaron Hall wasn't ability or potential. It was, look, playing two sports is really hard, especially at the collegiate level. Few people have done it and done it well. I mean, AKA Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson, Frank Thomas, but he wasn't that good at football, right? Relatively speaking, I'm talking being elite at both. So he gave that up and put in the time. I was more worried about him having too much on his plate from a scheme/offensive playbook issue, not being really able to focus, but he gave up baseball. So I like that move. It makes sense. It also tells you where Kalani Sitake's thinking. Sure, is Conover maybe more talented? Maybe. Is Romney more talented? Maybe. But he doesn't have experience, and we can't go under 500 after an 11-1 season, right? I mean, look, Algiers is good. Was it Gunner or Baylor that's the wide receiver? I always forget. Gunner Romney, he's a good wide receiver. Offensive line, anytime you have an empty in there, you're probably going to be pretty good, honestly. And I'm sort of nervous defensively up front. Okay? Right. Like losing Kairos Tonga is huge. I don't care what anyone tells you. They can have other guys. He was so good at just clogging the middle.
Right.
And also being, somewhat of a functional pass rusher at times. His ability really can't go understated as the impact he has on the game. So I'm interested to see how they play defensively up front. I think the offensive line will be good. And of course, always the number one concern, especially when you look at this schedule for me, and the cornerbacks and defensive backfield has been getting better at BYU over the last 4 or 5 years. But much as the U found out, when they moved from the Mountain West to the Pac-12, having one good game is great. But when you have Arizona, Utah, and Arizona State to start the season, 3 Pac-12 schools who are going to be looking to throw the ball, you got to put together consecutive good game after good game. And I don't know that they can do that. That remains to be seen.
It's going to be tough.
How much do you think a product of last year's success and the players on the team has got them, I don't want to say overly confident, but has raised the level of expectation to an unrealistic view from inside the program, right? Last year, I think, is more of an anomaly as opposed to what we're going to see going forward year after year, unless they have an easier schedule.
I think that's a good point. That's a very good question. I think, I think that's got to be a factor for sure. I mean, when you're used to winning, you kind of get used to it, and you kind of get that idea in your head that, we're just going to keep winning. I mean, it's just, I don't think it's a conscious thing. I think it's a subconscious thing that where you just kind of expect it. And that's a very good point. And really, if they end up going 1-2, how do they respond to that? What are they going to bounce back? Are they going to fight through it? I mean, they don't have Zach Wilson. That's the thing that I want everyone to remember. Like, he was the face of the team, obviously. He was the most talented member of the team. He willed that team to win a couple of those games. He was the identity of that team last year, and now they don't have him. And now, I don't care who it is on this squad. You're asking these guys to back up that kind of player against this kind of schedule. It's very difficult. So, to me, I think it's an outstanding question. And I'm really interested to see how they bounce back after some early season adversity, which I fully expect them to have. It's going to be tough.
Well, not just that. We'll have to see what Jaren Hall can do. I mean, you forget there were not a lot. Maybe a lot is an over-exaggeration. But some of the more memorable plays were Zach Wilson on broken down offensive sequences, ad-libbing it, and making a huge play. I don't know if Jaren Hall will pass in that scenario. I know he has the capability to, but he seems, at least from previous watching, that his idea in that scenario is more to run.
Right.
Because I think he's a more gifted runner than Zach Wilson, right? I mean, he's way, I think, athletically speaking, running the football more gifted than Zach Wilson. So I don't know how much that takes away from the offense, if that's an element that takes away. For me, it's mostly the question up front and in the defensive backfield. And the schedule's hard, right? Just remember, if you're a BYU fan, if Utah loses in October to USC and you beat them at the Coliseum, you can hold that over their head and tell them how they're better than Utah.
Exactly. Doesn't matter the head-to-head matchup, though.
Yeah, don't worry about that. However that turns out, it doesn't matter.
This is rivalry football. You know, you got to take those moral victories when you can get them.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter where they come from. I think that's about right. I think we're about right. Again, we're not coming at it from a Utah perspective when we break down the schedule and when we trying to predict the games they're going to win. I'm going to go to I pulled this up earlier. BetOnline.ag has, where's it at? I am looking for BYU. I think they had the over-under at 7 wins. Is that right? Where's it at? It's here somewhere. I'll find it in a second. But they had it at, oh, here we go. Yeah, the over-under's at 7 wins. And
go under.
I would go under too.
But it's questionable. You'll might get a push out of this because in years past, BYU always has that one game where they upset. It was USC a couple years ago. You know, so I mean, look, it could be Utah, it could be Arizona State, or it could be USC. A 7-5, while not unrealistic, would demand one of those upsets. And from my perspective, I mean, I don't know what Washington State's going to look like this year because we don't know who their quarterback will be yet. I mean, I have them going 2-3 versus the Pac-12, right? 2 wins versus Arizona and Washington State, losses versus the rest. Those other teams that they're playing are kind of the elite of the South.
Right.
So, while I can't totally dismiss it, I would be more shocked than maybe in previous years. And, you know, while you get 2 home games with Utah and Arizona, and that's obviously better than having to go on the road, they travel. And they're early in the year where, I mean, Utah's not going to be elevation issue. There's no cold typically. September 18th for the Arizona State one, and you got USC at the Coliseum. I do think it's interesting, and it's something to applaud. Isn't it weird? Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't BYU have the first game with fans at Jerry's World?
I think so.
Didn't they play Oklahoma and beat that? And now they're going to be the first game with fans in Las Vegas.
Crazy.
Pretty wild.
I mean, that does
cool.
say maybe there is some respect nationally if you're getting those types of games. That's great. Can you imagine what BYU Twitter and BYU fan base, how just the craziness that would appear if BYU starts off 3-0, if they beat Utah and beat Arizona State? That would be, I mean, that's, you want to talk about, that's like Jazz level of getting your expectations way too high and then dash probably towards the end. But can you just imagine the fan base if they go 3-0 or even 2-0 and they beat Utah?
It's going to be wild.
It would be wild. It's going
to be wild. I mean, here's the thing you need to remember. Last season from Zach Wilson is 3 years in the making.
True.
Zach Wilson started for 3 years, people. Not all his games looked like last year. Not against great opponents. They didn't look like that. He struggled his first 2 years, right?
Right.
At times. You could see that he was on the precipice, but he hadn't done it consistent enough where you could count on it.
Right.
And you got to sort of expect a similar pattern with Jaren Hall, which leads to what? A 6-6, 7-5 season at best. I could be wrong, but I'm going to go with history on this one, saying that when you're the man, life's a little different, no matter how talented you are. Few players step into the role and go 10-2 as starting their first season as starter.
It's tough to do. I could see them getting that Baylor game because Baylor's, they're not picked to be very good this year. A lot of turmoil in the Big 12 right now. So you just don't, I could see them getting that, but it is on the road. That's the only thing is it's on the road. So we'll have to see what happens there, but I could see them picking that one up. What do you think what's their max? What do you think the ceiling is? If they just play lights out, better than we expected, how many games do you think they could possibly win at their absolute max?
8.
That's
if everything went
8.
well.
Yeah, I got them at 8 too. I don't know where that other one comes from, but
probably Boise State.
Probably Boise State. Potentially Utah, just because it's a rivalry game.
True.
You never know what's going to happen in that game. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Again, man, we say this every year. I'm trying to think if there has been a year we haven't said this. BYU fans, just try to be a little realistic with your expectations. Don't go crazy national championship, Heisman, because that's stuff we always heard back in the Bronco days.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore, but it's still like, let's just temper your expectations a little bit. Still be excited, but it's not going to be. It's just tough, man. You got a lot of things going against you. I think next season they can really do some damage if they can keep everybody healthy. And Jaron Hall has a successful season, and he comes back. Well, let's see. What is Jaron Hall? Is he? He's a sophomore.
I think he's a sophomore.
Yeah, he's a sophomore, so he'll be back next year. So yeah, just build. I mean, this is a building year. That's what you need to look at it as. You can't look at it as we're following up 11-1 and we're going to continue that momentum. It's just not realistic. Just be prepared that this is a building year. This is a stepping stone for next year when you can really kind of go gangbusters. All right. Should we predict Utah? Should we go their schedule?
That works.
I'm going to say the same thing to my fellow Ute fans out there. Don't get your expectations too high, okay? I know we're super, and we should mention that Charlie Brewer has been announced as the starting quarterback. First of all, I think it was kind of expected, but this was a much tougher competition for that quarterback spot than I think anyone expected. Now, it could just be that that the coaches were saying this because they don't allow media in there to watch the practices anymore. But really, for everything that I'm hearing, it sounds like it was a much tougher competition. But we kind of all expected Charlie Brewer to get that start. My question is, why announce it now? Why do that? I don't understand. To me, it's very unlike Witt, too. Usually you want to keep the opponent guessing. You want them to prepare for both quarterbacks. So why announce it now? Do you have any idea?
I think if I had to guess, up there on the hill, expectations are high. Extremely high. And I mean, how often is it that, and this is the second time in Utah program history, that the second string QB is a team captain? Because Cam Rising was named to as the captain. That's unique. But I think it is sort of an idea of setting the tone. We've all seen the battle, at least internally, right? The players have seen it. The coaches have seen it. We know it's close. And when it's close, it's important to make sure that leadership is established.
Right.
And so I think it is a part of an establishment of the leadership of the program that this is our QB1. And look, I expect Cam Rising, if things go well, who knows how Weber State will play. They're coming off a spring season, which is a trip, right? I mean, Weber State was playing football in March and April and May, if I remember correctly. But I expect Cam Rising to get time. And it begs the question of, it's important to establish that hierarchy, saying Brewer's not coming out unless we're way ahead. Right. So I think it was just a team building exercise, if you will, of how it's going to proceed. And I think it was that way too, probably last year, but Cam Rising got hurt. So maybe it's a little unwit, a little un-Troy Taylor. I think it was the right move. Obviously it was really close. And time will tell, but I'm not sure they could really go wrong.
Right.
That has to be a nice spot if you're an offensive coordinator, the head coach, leader of a football program, where I don't know that you could have gone wrong either way.
Yeah, it's a luxury for Andy Ludwig for sure. Like, there's no doubt. Can you imagine just having this kind of problem?
It's great. It's something we've been hoping to have at the U for the last 7 years.
It is.
And we've only had it over the last 4 or 5, maybe.
Yeah, not used to it. And I mean, we'll see how it ends up. But for all appearances, it looks like this could be a good problem to have. And I think you're right. There's no doubt. I mean, how often does a quarterback play an entire season without missing some time for whatever reason, whether minor or major injury? So to have that insurance policy and Cam Rising, I think that's great, and we'll see what happens. So it's just a little weird to me that they announced it so early. I just don't know why you give, and even if you do it internally and let everybody know this is our guy and just hope it doesn't get leaked. That I understand. Like, if you're just trying to give confidence in Charlie Brewer and build that leadership, I think you just do it internally. But why announce it publicly? I don't understand. Let's go through the schedule, though. I'm going to give you the honors again. Let's hear what you got.
So, look, for the University of Utah running Utes, I know everyone doesn't like me calling them that.
No, they're not the running Utes. The basketball team are the running Utes.
If Brent Musburger says it, it must be true.
No, he doesn't know.
That's what he calls them.
Well, the basketball team he does. It's wrong. It's wrong. They're not the running Utes. It's a basketball team. I'll pull it up right now on Wikipedia.
Agree to disagree. Because we're going to be running over people all season long.
Fake news.
Running backs. I don't know if you saw the depth chart came out. Running back had 4 positions in the 2 deep. Four in the 2 deep.
That's crazy.
You see what I'm saying? 4 2 deep. That's not logical. Meaning that battle is still tight. I have them going 9-3. My losses are easier to predict than my wins. So I have them losing at USC, at Stanford, which is a surprise, I think, to most people, and at home versus Oregon.
Dude, we are exactly the same again.
What?
Exactly the same. Here's the one caveat, though. I could see, I kind of am, I put an asterisk next to the Arizona State win and the Stanford loss because I can see either of those flipping. I see them going 9-3, and I think one of those losses could either come to Arizona State or Stanford, just because the Utes, much like we talk about how BYU always has that one big upset win, Utah tends to have that one letdown game. And I can see that happening. Arizona State, I think, they got a lot going on there. That's the one thing, is they have a lot of turmoil in that program. And a lot of it is because of mismanagement by the team, obviously, and all the extracurricular stuff they got going on there during COVID and other issues. But still, it seems like that's building into a rivalry. The last couple of years especially, it feels like it's building into a rivalry. So I could kind of see that happening. It is at home, though, for the Utes, which is good. So that's why I picked them to win. But I could see it happening. But I agree with Stanford. I can see them losing that one. That feels like a game, for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like a safe game for me. And maybe it's just Stanford and some of the history we've had playing up there and just playing in Northern California in general. But it feels a little iffy. USC, man, I hope this is the year they can get over the hump. But like Nate the Hemorrhoid said, until they do it, it's going to be difficult for me to pick them winning in LA, in the Coliseum. Until they do it, we'll see. But they haven't done it so far.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And if it's not this year, what year will it be? Right? I mean, I was 50-50 on that. Because we're returning so much and they got, 5 games under their belt last year. And those games have been close, right? Regardless of Troy Williams almost beat USC. We've almost beat him. Jordan Wynn almost beat USC the year the Pac-12 opened, right?
Right.
Is that Jordan Wynn year? I think so. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was, because Starr had like 2 massive sacks and forced fumble. I think he may have forced a fumble for a pick six, or not a pick six, but for a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. And we went up 14-0 or something like that. But even when that happened, I was like, I don't know, man. It doesn't feel like this is safe. And of course, USC came back and won. But I think you're right about that. Now, again, betonline.ag has the Utes over and under at 9.5. So we are just under that. And again, I'm seeing a lot of Ute fans say 10 wins, 11 wins. Although I think that those predictions are probably a little bit more realistic than some of the overly optimistic BYU fan picks. But I still think it's a little high. Again, we don't have Tyler Huntley. You know, he's 2 years in the rearview window. We have a guy who's definitely proven he can win, but it's a different scheme. It's different personnel. There's too many question marks for me to go 11-1 or even 10-2. Now, go ahead.
No, you're right. Like, it's hard but something I just wanted to point out to see if it would change your thinking is, who's the game the week before? The reason I had to pick a USC Arizona State, like you're saying, loss, is that's back-to-back weeks, right? I was a little more hesitant on Oregon because Arizona's the week before.
Right.
You know, and they're not supposed to be very good.
Yeah.
Stanford won. UCLA, people are telling me, and by all accounts, UCLA is on the rise. So that's going to be a tough game. So if you're going to pick any one where I could see them picking up the win, it would be Oregon, probably, because it's later in the season. It's going to be cold. You're coming off an Arizona game, which hopefully wasn't difficult. But those back-to-back, USC, Arizona State, those are two top-tier teams, top 25 teams that you got to play back-to-back, one on the road, one at home. But they're both rivals, and they're both games the fan base and the coaching program wants to win. Let's hope they can do it. I mean, getting to week, 5 without a loss is pretty good.
If they can do that, yeah, that'll be really good. Okay, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you for BYU. What is Utah's max? Like, what the most possible amount of wins they got on this schedule? What do you see it as?
11.
11
would be the max if everything went perfect. And really, for me, it's that Arizona State USC back-to-back weeks where it's hard for me to imagine they don't drop one of those.
Yeah.
They're coming off the USC high. Say they beat USC finally. Coming off that high, they poop the bed at home versus Arizona State.
Wow. I got their max at 10, which is only one more than what I have already. And it's just because, I mean, it's the Pac-12, man. It happens every single year. This is part of the reason why the Pac-12 is not very well respected nationwide, is because it really does cannibalize itself every single year. It's a much more well-rounded, albeit probably not quite as talented league as some of the other ones out there. But because we don't have an Alabama or a Clemson who's always getting into the college football playoff, they're disrespected. They're not respected as much as maybe they deserve. I'm not saying that the Pac-12 is an outstanding league. I definitely think of the P5 conferences as they're formed right now. I definitely the Pac-12 is probably in the lowest, if not lowest one or two. But they do cannibalize themselves every single year, and I think it's going to happen with Utah. We've seen it before, and I think we'll see it again. I mean, if Utah beats Oregon a couple years ago in the Pac-12 championship game, they're in, they're in. So it's just really frustrating that happens, and I just don't see it changing this year.
Here's one thing to consider that didn't happen because of 2020 and the pandemic. A lot of these top tier teams lost players. Like, I'm thinking of Pittman at USC. They go pro young. So, I mean, the Pac-12 has a lot of players drafted. The skill set is there. They just typically leave earlier, and the fill-in is more difficult to find.
Yeah.
For certain teams.
Right.
I think this year, while there will be what you're talking about occurring, I actually think it is more likely than in previous years that there are one or two really good teams because they're returning everyone. Whereas in the past, USC, for example, would lose Pittman, but say Washington State would return their, Gardner Minshew and Max Borghi and whoever else, so they could challenge them. Well, now they're both returning the same pieces, And I think USC and or Utah and or Washington/Oregon, I think they'll rise to the top. I don't think it'll be 11-1 or 12-0, but I think those other teams will be good. But I think the difference isn't as drastic. And I know everyone says USC reloads. They got dudes, whatever. I mean, that's all true, but you need to play. And when Pittman was there weren't a whole lot of wide receivers taking his spot, as you've seen what he's done in the pros.
Good point. Okay, Utah State, Aggies. The over-under on betonline.ag is 3.5 wins. I have them easily on the over with that one. Again, let's let you do the honors.
Wow, I'm so grateful for these honors that you keep giving me. Look, I am not as nearly as low on the Aggies, and we'll have to get Aggie up on sometime during the season to discuss. I'm going 5-7. If I had a desire, I would place money on taking the over. And let me tell you why. North Dakota should be able to beat them. UNLV should be able to beat them. Colorado State should be able to beat them. New Mexico State should be able to beat them. New Mexico should be able to beat them. Those are my wins.
Dude, all three teams, we have the same record, same wins, same losses. I have the exact same thing.
Not good.
It's not good. What are the odds
We're
of that?
either going to be amazing or terrible together.
Oh, dude. Yeah, you know what? I'm scared. I'm a little scared now.
Me too. We should have worked this out better. We should have talked.
But also, I mean, I'm not just going to change wins and losses around based on, just to be different. I genuinely believe that this is what they can do. Although I will say, I also think that 5-7 is probably their max. I don't see them picking up, let's see. Maybe Washington State. Maybe they go 6-6, but it's on the road, so probably not. Who else? I don't think they're beating Air Force. They're not beating Boise State or BYU. Maybe Hawaii. I can see them.
Wyoming, maybe.
Okay, you know what? I can see them.
They were 2-4 last year.
Okay, I'm going to say their max.
According to Phil Still, they're going to be second in the Mountain Division behind Boise State.
I'm gonna say the Aggies max is probably 6 wins. I'll go 6.
I would agree with that. And look, we still don't have, Blake Anderson up there is doing sort of the Kyle Whittingham, Troy Taylor. I don't think we're going to see a starting quarterback name, whether it's Logan Bonner or whoever, right? The real question for Utah State is, can they get back to doing what they do well? That's playing pretty good defense and scoring a lot of points. That's when they've been most successful, at least in the run with Keaton and Love. That's when they were the best, right?
Yep.
The defense was good at creating turnovers, putting the ball in Jordan Love's hands / Chucky Keaton in the past, and they scored a lot. The defense towards the end, after Bobby Wagner and the leg left, and Nick Vigil and others, sort of became more of a question mark than the calling card of their team. I suspect that to change a little, but really, can they score enough points? I think they'll be able to produce points, frankly, more than what the average fan is expecting. That's why I'm going 5-7. And I agree, 6-6 is probably the ceiling, but coming off 1-5, you'd take that, right? Even 5-7 coming off when 1-5 is headed the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely think they're going to cover the over under. I mean, they're going to be over for sure, as far as I'm concerned. Okay. Let's do real quick. I want to talk about the alliance. I'm going to say in heavy quotes, the alliance between the Pac-12, ACC, and Big Ten. A couple things. You know what? Let me read. This is from, if I can find what tab I had it on. It's from the Sporting News. Where did it go? Give me a second. I'll find it. But here's the thing. I understand this is a reaction to Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. So now the SEC is basically, I mean, they're Division I football right now, essentially. They've elevated themselves so high above everybody else. They were already high above everybody else. But now, just with these two programs, Texas and Oklahoma, with bringing them in, it's just, they're on a whole different playing field right now. And so this is obviously a reaction to that. I just don't really know what this is. I've read about it. There's nothing on paper. They haven't agreed to anything really other than just a handshake deal. I don't know what this is or what the intention is. I don't quite understand. I think it just means that they're not going to backstab each other. I think it's an intention to place them out of conference games and to vote together. Is that kind of, am I getting it right?
I mean, I don't even know if you could go that far. It's a gentleman's agreement to work together to try to have a seat at the table. But how can you trust if it's not written down on paper that you're not going to swipe a team? Granted, most of those teams would probably be from the Big 12. So,
right.
Your alliance is still strong there, right? Because they're not part of it. And conceptually, like, I get what they're trying to do is make sure that the three other major power conferences, P5s, whatever they're called, have a seat at the table when the time comes, which makes sense, right? I mean, the idea is good. It does. I mean, it is knee jerk, but it had to be done probably. But the fact that there's nothing on paper, coming from a lawyer's son leaves me nervous. It leaves me extremely nervous. I think the Utes are in a good position, not only in the alliance, but as far as the conference goes, right? Like, I think the Utes, not only from a football perspective, less so from a basketball, but from all the other sports perspectives, as well as being a research institution, I think they're firmly set their footprint in the Pac-12 and remain a viable and important part of the conference. But nonetheless, these are very not only intriguing, but nervous times. If you're a conference commissioner / president / CEO, as they're called in the Pac-12, if you're not a member of the SEC, they're nervous. I have every reason to be.
Oh, absolutely. I understand it. It just feels a little half-assed. And I agree. The whole thing where nothing's written down. I'm going to read this. This is from slate.com, and it is by Alex Kirshner. And this is just a quick excerpt from his piece. He says, the thing is, the alliance does not technically exist because the leagues did not sign any kind of contract. Big Ten commish Kevin Warren says that if you need to go back and check contract language, well, you've gotten into business with the wrong people. First of all, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. That's like the worst kind of justification for not getting stuff in paper, in writing, and signed. He goes on to say, it is also not a reaction to Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, Warren says. But to be totally candid, you have to evaluate what's going on in the landscape of college athletics, such as specifically Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. Okay, again, that is incredibly stupid. He's basically saying it's not a reaction to Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, but it really is a reaction to it. Like it's like the biggest non-statement I've ever heard. What the alliance will do is not clear. The leagues say they'll have a scheduling agreement in football and basketball, but acknowledge that won't start at any particular time because of existing game contracts. The three conferences will likely work together to stall college football playoff expansion for a few years. They'll put out press releases about their commitment to student athlete, mental and physical health, safety, wellness, and support, which is the first bullet point in their press release about this new arrangement. From that paragraph alone, I don't know what the hell this is. I don't understand it. I don't, other than just to announce like, hey, we're united, but we can also weasel out of it if we want to. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. It just seems like a harebrained scheme just to kind of sort of announce to the college football world that they're on the same page without really having to commit to being on the same page.
Yeah, it's the opening salvo of their ability to have a seat at the table. I mean, it's goofy, right? Especially when it's followed up moments later by tomorrow, Friday, the Pac-12 will announce whether or not they're expanding.
Right?
So it's weird. And most people, I heard Mark Harlan say he doesn't expect there again. George, new Pac-12 commissioner, will have a press conference to say there is nothing to report. What a weird idea. Why do you need to have a press conference if you aren't expanding? If you're not expanding, you're having a press conference to tell us you're not expanding. Isn't that a press release? Not a press conference?
Zero sense. And I understand.
Here, let me help you write it. Due to our forming of alliance, we are not seeking to expand the Pac-12 currently. Thank you, Commissioner. Done.
I will not take any questions.
There's no questions to be had. We're not expanding. We're not.
Other than, why are we here? What is the point of this? It's so stupid, and I don't understand it. I guess the reason why the Big 12 is left out of this is because if they do want to poach some of their teams, they're able to do it. And because at first I'm like, why do this, first of all? And why wouldn't you get the Big 12 involved? But now I understand that in case they want to poach some of those teams, that makes sense. I mean, the Big 12, they're in trouble. They are, I mean, this move has essentially just ruined that conference.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like, the real question is, like, if you're BYU, look, and the Pac-12 tries to survive, I don't know how willing they are to make the concessions that BYU previously asked for to become a member of the conference. But the question remains, are they willing to make those concessions now? Maybe. But also, if you're BYU, are you really willing to possibly commit to that and get on a possibly sinking ship?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, let's be honest. The Big 12 needs Texas and Oklahoma to exist, in my opinion.
Without a doubt. That's why back in the day when the Pac-12 was expanding and they were trying to get Texas and Oklahoma, that's why it would have been a death sentence for the Big 12 as it is now.
Yeah, and I mean, in case you haven't been listening long, my granddaddy's from Arkansas, man. I remember the Southwest Conference. Texas, Arkansas, big deal.
Yep.
In fact, I'm wearing kind of Texas. My grandpa would not be okay with that. Like, we only wear Razorback red in this house.
Right.
I kid. But it's a big deal. I mean, and I guess here's the interesting question. I've been sort of thinking about it and bouncing around. If the Pac-12, because look, it's probably going to be two. They're saying two. I think it should be three, personally. 3 super conferences.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to the conclusion, if the Pac-12 were going to poach from the Big 12, these are the 4 schools I would like. Kansas State, keep that rivalry together. And I mean, ideally, I would like BYU, but I don't think they're going to, because I don't think the Pac-12 is ever going to give up on Sunday play.
Right.
So unless BYU is willing to drop that, it's just not an option.
Right.
And then the other 2 teams I'd want are Baylor and Iowa State.
Yeah, I know. I agree with all of those. I think that
those are the 4 teams that if I were the Pac-12, I would be targeting.
I agree.
I would say Oklahoma State, but I don't think you want to go past Midwest of the country. And so like, that's sort of how I imagine it. Like, the Big 12 will be separated in some way where the ACC and Big Ten will pull those schools that make it more financially and travel wise responsible. And then the Pac-12 will pull the other ones that make it financially wise and responsible for traveling. It will be interesting. I mean, look, and this is sort of a big one for you. I mean, college football is on the path to losing so much, in my opinion, of what it made it special for the hardcore fans.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wonder how people at LSU and Alabama, like, sure, they're still going to be good and dominate, but man, when kids are making millions of dollars, what does this? I mean, it opens a can of worms. Like, let's remember, Saints fans, there are some Saints fans who do not like the Saints right now because of their protests over Black Lives Matter. Right. Can you imagine if the Alabama football team, who did protest and did do a walkthrough last year for Black Lives Matter, is making $1 million, hasn't played a snap, and does a Black Lives Matter protest? I'm just wondering, like, is half of the country not going to watch football? Because it presents unique and interesting and weird scenarios that never were really a part of the college football scene. Had sort of been left to the professionals. But man, you know, college kids, they're active. They're not willing to stay quiet necessarily all the time. There's so much interesting things that could occur over the next, I guess 2026 is when Oklahoma is going, not only with expansion, but with athletes getting paid and not filling necessarily that they have to stay within the parameters of the program. I mean, how do you stop someone who's doing an endorsement from endorsing someone?
You can't. I mean, I think you're right.
What if the endorsement is
college sports in general, especially college football, because that's the driving force. It's changing. It's not going to be the same, and it's a bummer. I mean, selfishly, it's a bummer for me, just because I love the pageantry. I love everything that college football represents. I love it that it's college kids going out there and competing for everything. And we've talked about this before, but I am glad that they're getting paid. It's stupid. Like there's these two. It's a split in my brain because selfishly I like how things are and I don't want it to change. But the other half of my brain, the more rational one, is like you cannot have these kids out there risking their health, safety, and everything that they've worked for and not give them compensation. That is immoral. That's unethical. You can't do that. But at the same time, I think these new rules, the NIL, there's an NLI, I can't remember, NIL, I think it's going to change everything about college sports. It's going to change how we know it. Now, whether that's a good thing or bad thing, we'll have to see. But it is going to change, and it's not going to be as, I don't know. Maybe it will be. I don't know. But I know that the landscape of college sports is going to be different forever.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. There was no, at least for me, no illusion that somehow a lot of the upper echelon players, at least in football and basketball, weren't getting money on the side somehow.
Yep.
Or whatever it is they needed. Right.
Right.
So it was a wink and nod that we they're getting paid, but it's more important because it's preserving our Saturdays.
Yep.
The real question is, when they're getting paid, what does it mean for Saturdays and NCAA tournament, etc.?
Yep.
How much does it it's going to be really interesting. And this is how important a head coach will be.
10 seconds.
Like Nick Saban's players are getting paid, but he's still keeping the Alabama program in line. So is Kyle Whittingham up on the Hill. So is Kalani Sitake down at BYU. But when is enough? I don't know. Have they capped name, image, and likeness?
I don't know what's going to happen. We're out of time for the TV show, but let's, do you want to stay for a couple more minutes because I got to go through my music list, man.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the question. Is there a cap? When will enough be enough and how much will it change?
I don't know.
No one knows, but change is coming. And let's hope it's definitely for the betterment of the kids. Let's hope the sport as a whole sort of keeps what make people like it.
Yep.
The pageantry, the playing for the man on the front of the jersey, not on the back. Let's hope that stays part of it.
Yep. That's going to do it for the TV show. If you want to hear the rest of our conversation, we're going to go through our bands. Head over to doganddeuce.com or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Google Play or Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, or as always, youtube.com/DD on sports, and we'll continue this conversation. Dude, I don't know. I don't know if there's been a cap on it. I haven't read enough up on it to know exactly what the rules are, but we'll see. It is going to change everything, though. That's for sure. There's no way it's not going to change.
I mean, if they put a cap on it, it doesn't seem to be an actual name, image, and likeness. There's no cap on earning money in America that I'm aware of.
Exactly.
So it'll be weird. It's an interesting debate. Let me hear your bands. I'm so excited.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it was last week, our boy Nate the Hemorrhoid came in and gave us his list, and he did his top 10 favorite bands and top 10 most influential / best bands. We don't really have criteria for it. This is all very subjective. I'm just going to say that right now. It's not, if you have reasons that another band should be on there instead of what I got, you're right. This is just my dumb opinions. But first, before I go into mine, our boy Doug, at Doug Tones on Twitter, who is much more up on the music scene in general than I ever will be. He is a music geek. He did 3 lists for us. And I think you saw this, but he did a most referenced, most overlooked influential artists, and his personal favorite. So let's go with his most referenced. And I think that when he says reference, I think he means most referenced as being influential to other artists and fans out there. He's got the Beatles, Elvis, Bob Dylan, Rolling Stones, Grateful Dead, Hank Williams. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about Hank Williams. Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Bob Marley, and Black Sabbath. And I don't know how we missed Bob Marley in our original discussions, because Bob Marley is both of us are big fans. He's a favorite of both of ours, so I don't know how we missed that. Let's go into his most overlooked influential artist. And I really cannot, I can't really comment on these because I'm not I know who most of these are, not all of them, but I don't know enough about them to comment one way or the other. He's got Son House, Willie Dixon, Ella Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, Les Paul, Kraftwerk, Tina Turner, T-Rex, Curtis Blow, and the MC5. Tina Turner, that's interesting too.
He's right. I mean,
I think
Tina
he's right.
Turner's a boss.
Absolutely.
I mean, so is Curtis Blow.
But you notice Metallica's not on either of those.
I did notice that. I sort of wonder and this was most underrated.
Yes.
I feel like maybe on there the Beastie Boys should have been.
Ooh.
They're pretty revolutionary.
They
I
really
feel like
are.
they get forgot.
That's a good point.
I was just thinking of that in my head. Like, where do the Beasties fit into this?
That's a good point.
They're pretty legit.
And then let's finish it up with Doug's personal, his personal favorite top 10. Rush, Pink Floyd, Bad Religion, AC/DC, Motorhead, Tool, Deftones, Pearl Jam, Metallica, and Black Sabbath.
Those are good lists.
Any thoughts on those?
They're playing basketball. If you know Curtis Blow, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I like them. That's a lot of effort. We appreciate it, Mr. Doug Tones. R.I.P. Charlie Watts, Rolling Stone drummer. That's a big loss.
Yeah.
I like him. It's hard, clearly, and he put way a great deal of thought into it. I mean, I can't argue with many of them. When I went through his list, it is so hard because, like, to me, the Beastie Boys are interesting, and I don't know where they belong or if they belong. Needless to say, we appreciate it, and it's really sort of hard to dispute it. You know what I mean? Because and I'd have to get real deep. I mean, the Beatles, Elvis, Dylan, Stones, Dead, Hank Williams, Zeppelin, Floyd, Marley, Sabbath.
It's hard to argue any of those.
Those are legit.
Yeah.
Those are 10 bands or people, when you're talking Hank Williams, that changed music forever. Whether you like their music or not, it's
true. It's true.
And
again, we didn't really set out criteria. So, and I trust Doug probably more than anybody because he's truly, like I said, he's a music geek. He understands this stuff better than I ever will. And he dives deep into this stuff. All right, let me read mine, shall we?
Please.
So this is my top 10 band. And I'm going to say influential or best or whatever you want to say. I don't know. I don't know what the criteria is, but these are the names that I would put on there. And mine, I mean, I'm not going to lie. A lot of it I just kind of copied from Doug because I think he's absolutely right on most of them. But I did switch around a couple things. So I got the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Elvis, Rolling Stones, Robert Johnson, the old blues man, the original blues man, Black Sabbath, Bob Marley, Bob Dylan, Ramones, and Nirvana.
Yeah, Nirvana's getting sued right now.
They are?
Put that in your for the Nevermind album. Have you seen that one?
No. What's going on there?
The kid who's on the cover is suing him for child porn because his dingling's hanging out.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, he's famous.
I like your list. Your list is a good one. I mean, I think we're getting closer.
Yeah. Because
eventually in about a year, I think we'll have a definitive Dog and Do Show top 10 band ones. I like yours. I'm going to set aside some time tonight to really go through mine.
You really should. We need a list from you next week. We need it. Because here's the thing.
I'll do it.
Here's the thing. On mine, I had to put in Nirvana. I that's probably a little controversial one because they're newer than a lot of these bands and a lot of these artists. But I do think, like our generation coming up, I think they influenced a ton of people. Now, they haven't been around as long as like Bob Dylan or the Beatles, and so they haven't had a chance to influence as many, but I really think that they kind of changed the music landscape when they broke big, because that's when you saw punk rock kind of blow up in the public consciousness right after that, because of Nirvana paved the way for it. And of course, I don't think there'd be a Nirvana on the radio if it weren't for the Ramones. So that's why I have to put that in there. And Nate the Hemorrhoid will just love that one.
Or Lead Belly. Yeah, I mean, see, to me, I think Metallica, as far as that comparison, fits that mold better than Nirvana. I don't disagree with you, but I think I think they have a bigger breadth of influence than maybe Nirvana did.
Maybe.
I mean,
that could be
being like
maybe.
Grunge is kind of dead, right? But being a metalhead, I mean, I see and I'm not one, and it's weird that I'm standing for Metallica. Like, I feel uncomfortable. Like, putting metal, which is a inherently kind of hard genre for a lot of people to like, into the mainstream.
Dude, but I'm putting, like, if I'm talking about metal and going pop, I'm talking Black Sabbath, I'm talking Ozzy Osbourne, I'm talking Iron Maiden. I'm going way, like, I think those guys are way more influential than Metallica. Doesn't mean Metallica is not influential or good, but I'm just saying I think those bands are, if we're talking metal, that's what metal is. That's what metal came from. Are those bands? Metallica,
yeah, but they were on the fringe. That's the thing. Yes,
they weren't on the fringe. No way. Led Zeppelin,
bro.
Black Sabbath.
Like, dude, I take great umbrage. Like, Led Zeppelin is rock and roll. To me, that is not metal, personally.
But that's it's the roots of metal.
I understand.
That's where it came
I understand. From. Like Sabbath, old school metal. Yes, there's a darker side to metal.
Yeah, it's not
like
Metallica.
Led Zeppelin, like, bro, bunch of hippies playing music and running around with Coca-Cola jamming. Like, okay, like, I love them, deny them.
Singing about
Can't
Lord of the
deny
Rings.
Legit. But there's a darker side to metal that's Sabbath, and Lemmy, Motorhead.
I put Ozzy before Metallica. There's a lot of bands.
But they didn't break into the mainstream.
Ozzy's not.
That's my
You're
point.
saying Ozzy's not mainstream?
No, not as like he is now because of a TV show.
Oh, he was
MTV,
before then, man. You're saying
but
Black
not
Sabbath?
just because of his music.
Black Sabbath?
And I would argue that Ozzy doesn't have a TV show if it's not for Metallica. It would be too weird to put Ozzy on there if Metallica hadn't come. I don't know. Sorry, I just don't. It's not about whether or not they're a better band. It's about what they did in the music field. Like, Enter Sandman was played by freaking Mariano Rivera every time he came into the game.
That's great,
but... and I love War Pigs. It's like one of my favorite songs, right? But like, and Crazy Train is maybe their favorite song, but like, that in and of itself, a dude who is a professional level piano player who throws a baseball for the New York Yankees, who's from the Dominican Republic, chose Metallica as his song to enter.
By that
kind of, I'm talking about cultural significance.
By that rationale, like, they play Bro Hymn from Pennywise at ballparks all over the country every single game. So we could say Pennywise is just as influential as Metallica, which is not even close to true. So if we're going that route,
did you hear what I said? A dude who's a professional piano player, Mariano Rivera, plays like 15 instruments.
I did not know that.
Isn't from America and chose that song. There must be something good, I would imagine, musically about it. I don't play 15.
No, I'm not saying they're not good musically. I'm just saying I'd put bands ahead of them. That's
Let
all I'm saying.
Let me ask you this. Did you know about Black Sabbath or Metallica first?
Metallica for sure.
Okay. I think our generation goes in reverse. Whereas in the past, I think, like, if you're talking about, like, did you know about Pearl Jam or Led Zeppelin first?
Led Zeppelin. Without a doubt.
Like, in the context of metal, I think it goes in reverse. I think most kids know about Metallica or Pantera. That's how, and then they find out about Sabbath, and Motorhead. That's my opinion.
That's how a lot of people got into the Misfits, because Metallica covered like 5 Misfits songs, and so that's how they got into it. Let me read just as a vanity thing, I'm going to read my favorite bands, and I cheated. I went to 11. I couldn't stop. Dude, I couldn't stop at a 10. But also after this, our good friend Jed Pearson, he also chimed in, but not with his list. He gave us a different perspective on the Beatles. So I want to read that, after I do my vanity thing and read my favorite bands. So, and this is kind of in order. Like there are a couple, you can rearrange some things here and there, but it's pretty much in order. The Misfits, Vandals, Bad Religion, Frank Turner, Harley Poe, Bouncing Souls, Descendants, whose concert I missed because of COVID. Thanks a lot. I should have gone. Amigo the Devil, Jukebox Romantics, Pantera, and of course Danzig. And
crazy, you put
Pantera. Like, here's the thing: I'm a little embarrassed about it. I'm a little ashamed because they're not good people. They're racist. They're very problematic. And so I have done a lot of work to separate the art from the artists on this one. I just want to say that outright. Like, I don't condone anything that they represent. But man, Vulgar Display of Power is such a good record.
Dimebag could play it, man. They can play the guitar.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah. Okay. So our boy Jed. So Jed's an old friend, like a super old friend. And we've been posting our episodes on Facebook for 11 years now. And he listened to our podcast for the first time last week. So welcome, Jed. But you know what?
Welcome.
I don't even care. Like, I'm super happy that he's listened. But he also said that he just barely discovered podcasts. So he's a little behind the times. But you know what, man? There's no bad time to get on board.
True.
Here's what he said. He said, "Loved your Beatles discussion. I agree they are number one. They hit you when you least expect it from me. They are like camp, and I tend to go wander through the woods and adventure, but then return back. A lot of their genius was in their production and studio work, but the compositions are important too. You'll find something that originated with the Beatles in just about every part of modern music, which is absolutely correct. And that's why we kind of all have put the Beatles as number one. I didn't understand it until I went back through their entire entire catalog backwards, which is interesting. I don't know if I can go through the entire Beatles catalog, whether it's forwards or backwards. I don't know if I have it in me. And I responded to him and I just said, look, I get the Beatles and I get that people love them and I appreciate what they've done for music. They just don't do it for me. They never have. And I just don't really care.
Yeah, look, man, awesome. There's 3 Beatles albums I'll listen to: Rubber Soul, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club, and the White Album. That's all. I don't own them, but I don't despise them. I mean, when you're talking early pop, maybe I'm aging myself here. Do you remember when the Beatles came back on the scene and their whole catalog and they released like a double set and the CD had an apple on it?
Yeah.
Anthology, probably it was called.
Right.
Yeah, I had that. And I liked that when I was like 9 or whatever, however old I was. And I liked pop music, like it's good. Like, I feel like I'm in 1950. Yeah, it's great if I want to feel like I'm in 1950. Rubber Soul, White Album, Sgt. Pepper's. They got a little more eclectic, but you can't deny their place.
You can't.
I begrudgingly hold my nose and put them number one.
Me too.
I do not really enjoy their music overall, but I can't deny their place in the history of this thing called music.
True. Before we finish, just a quick question. What was your first tape you ever bought with your own money and first CD you ever bought with your own money?
See, I don't know the first one I ever bought with my own money. I know the first ones I got.
Okay,
first CD one was Guns N' Roses, Use or Illusion 1 and 2.
Ooh, you got both of them. Nice.
Yeah.
What about tape?
First tape. Dang. I had a lot of tapes, man.
I did too. I love tapes.
Yeah, I have a lot of CDs still. One should arrive in the mail today. God, I don't know. I was in Columbia House. It could have been something weird. The first tape I really remember having was Soundgarden, Bad Motor Finger.
Oh, you had that on cassette?
Yeah.
Nice.
Columbia House, man. I didn't even know who Soundgarden was yet.
Yeah. Dude, that was a hard record. Like, it was harder than their later stuff.
It's like it's actually probably my favorite Soundgarden album.
Yeah. So
Louder Than Love is good too.
My first tape, MC Hammer.
What is it?
MC Hammer.
Hammer now you're bringing
Hammer.
I definitely had an MC Hammer tape.
Dude, that was
No
my
question
first
about that.
tape, and I loved it so much. Like it's I mean, I'm really dating
Can't deny
myself.
Hammer. He's got
Yeah.
his place.
Yeah.
He dominated this charts for like a good 4-year run.
And it was his first one. I think that's the one, Please Hammer, Don't Hurt Him. I think that's the name of it.
Can't touch this. Ding.
Exactly. It was the
Get
Can't
You
Touch
Quick.
This one. Yep. And then my first CD was Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here.
Dang, that's a good one.
This to this day, still one of my favorite albums ever. It's
Love
amazing.
that album. You went out and bought that yourself, huh?
Yeah, I was with my uncle, and he took me to a CD store, and it was the first time I'd been to one, and I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I was young, and he's like, these are good, and these are good, and these are good, and I saw Pink Floyd, and the guy was on fire on the record cover, and I was like, I want that one. Didn't know anything about it at all, and so bought it and loved it.
That is a great thing to open yourself to, like not knowing, and then it turned out to be Wish You Were Here. Wow.
Because honestly, knowing my sensibilities and my style, if I did not get that as my first CD, I don't think I ever would have got into Pink Floyd at all. Ever. But because I opened up kind of my musical journey with that record, then I was more open to their other stuff. And I love it. Love it.
Dude, I love Floyd.
Can't deny it, man.
It's really hard for me to narrow this down because I just like music so much and I don't even know why the question started in my head, but it sort of seems like an unfair thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because like music is so subjective, and B, I think Jed was hitting on something important. It's moments in time.
Exactly.
Like there are points where Marley is like the most important person in my life because he's talking about, like, musically speaking, he's talking about peace, love, unity, all that. And then there's other times where it's Rage Against the Machine. Then there's other times where it's Tyler Childers. Then there's other times where it's, Floyd or whoever is bumping on a Friday night. So it's kind of weird. And I would be interested, like, this is where I need really like Kurt Cobain, because he'd lay it out for you about how stupid it is to try to put bands in order. My question was stupid, not your guys' efforts. Like I need someone like that, or like where is like I don't know, who's another musician to be like, why would we gauge best band, like an outspoken one who could do that well?
Yeah. Are you asking?
Yeah, like who would be another one? Who's one who we could try to get on the show to have him tell us how dumb we are?
That's a good question. We're going to have to work on that.
Like, who do you think musicians, because Rolling Stone does stuff like this all the time, like best guitarist.
Yeah.
Like, do you think they read that, pick up that art, and they're like, what a waste of time?
I think so. Because here's the thing, like it's just like a BuzzFeed article, like top 10 best, bands. And you just can't, I mean, have you ever looked at at one of these lists on Rolling Stone or Spin or whatever, and it's like top 40 punk bands of all time or top 40 hip hop concerts of all time? And just the comments are just an absolute shit show of people being like, this is so stupid. Like you putting this above this, like it's so subjective. There's absolutely nothing. That's why I was a little hesitant to do it in the first place. But that's why I wanted to preface it with like, dude, this is just what I think. It doesn't matter.
I mean, maybe the only one that isn't subjective is the Beatles.
I think that's about as close as you're going to get to purely objective, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting. It'd be some, I mean, and I brought it back because my brother is a metalhead, and I said, yeah, dude, no one agrees with me. He thinks, no, definitely top 10 band of all time, Metallica. So I did go to the Rolling Stones article. They weren't in the top 10, but some of the other ones they had, I can't remember who they were. I knew Marley was in there. I knew that one was probably coming. There were a couple other where I was like, yeah, okay. Velvet Underground was the big one.
Okay.
I like Velvet Underground, but like, I don't know.
But they're pretty important for the formation of the modern music scene.
True. I mean, and there is in there influential, not me necessarily liking their music. And I do, but not like
same
a huge amount.
Same. Exactly. Well, yeah, we're changing the show. Now it's just going to be music all the time.
Music 24/7. You've come to the wrong place for sports, but we got top 10 lists.
Exactly. Okay, I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else on my list. Enjoy week 0 because I am like super freaking pumped about this. I'm glad it was a nice surprise because it's like, oh, we get football this weekend. This is gonna be amazing. So we even get Pac-12 football, which is even better. So enjoy week 0. We'll be back next week. We're going to be previewing the games, the actual games, and I cannot wait for that. I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to go Utah by 138 over Weber State. I'm calling it right now.
Seems reasonable.
Seems reasonable. It's within reason for sure. So come back next week and let's hear your lists. Let's hear what you think. What do you think each team? What's your win total for each team? For Utes, Cougars, and Aggies. We want to hear that as well. And email us dogandeuce@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. I'm Dog.
And I'm Deuce.
And we will talk to you next week.
Thanks for making us a part of your day.